Okay, I'm sorry that I'm like being ridiculous, but I have like served community my entire life, and for you even considering me and acknowledging me in this way, like I sound like I'm giving fucking Oscars.
This is Devora, and if you're new to the creator economy, you might not know who she is yet, but her face has probably been on your phone's home screen already. How did she become one of the early faces of Clubhouse? What did she do to be at the core of making the LA tech scene a thing? As a prolific podcaster, Espree has been featured in prestigious publications like Forbes, Entrepreneur, Harper's Bazaar, Inc., and many more. All these great achievements are due to what I think is her superpower, something she calls the art of human connection. She's a master of building community and connecting people, and today she's giving us the blueprint on how to connect people to your brand working with creators. This podcast is sponsored by Riverside, but more on that later.
When I first started in technology, there were like 20 of us in LA that would get together. There was really no tech scene here. So it was me and just, a couple handful of other people who built Los Angeles to be the third largest tech city in the world. So it's pretty extraordinary. I'm really proud of my work.
Props to you, girl. I'm happy and I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
Espree.
Yes.
Talk to us about the creator economy, because obviously you've been in tech, but you also been like doing podcasts and you've been also in the media and the career economy space before anyone was calling it even the career economy. So talk to us about the evolution you've seen. Yes. So share your thoughts.
I think I'm going to actually bring it back to your and my connection, how we initially connected, because that relates directly to the answer of the question. You and I connected and we formed the relationship we did because of integrity. We met one another. We felt we had a really genuine conversation. We were both honorable people of integrity, and we wanted to carry the relationship forward. And I believe for both of us, it had nothing to do with status. Didn't matter how many followers we had. It didn't matter how much money we had in the bank. It didn't matter what kind of access we had. We just liked one another's character, and we're like, this is a person I want in my corner.
Okay, let's pause right here for a second, because I want to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes on how I made this video. Every time there's guests on my episodes, I record all their content with Riverside. Our videos are recorded locally on both of our devices, which means that if the connection breaks or anything happens, we're good. This is actually the main reason why I started using Riverside 2 years ago, but it's a completely new tool today. During the last few months, they've been incorporating a lot of very interesting AI tools. All the video you record is automatically transcribed. That allows you to edit your video by making changes on the text. Magic Clips is another AI tool that will find the most relevant moments of the conversation and create clips that are ready to post on social media. And one of my favorites, AI Notes, super useful also for meetings, that will summarize the conversation and even create chapters for your YouTube videos. Absolutely essential tool for me, and I'm super happy that I was able to partner with them and make it easier for you to get started. All you need to do is click on the link down below and use my code AlexAntolino for a 15% off discount when you sign up. I would say do what I did and experiment with it for a month or two. It's not even $20 a month with a discount, so there's not much you're gonna lose there. And you might unlock great content opportunities in meetings you're already having by just thinking media first and having the right tool. So just think about it. Now let's go back to a video.
And I think it's interesting in business when we're talking about the creator economy, or we're talking about podcasting, or we're talking about YouTube, or we're talking about speaking engagements, or whatever it is we may be talking about. Most people are after this word clout. And so they only want to work with what they perceive to be high status people because they want to be associated with those people. But at the end of the day, one, their audience doesn't necessarily convert into your audience. So you may be building for the wrong audience if you go after that approach. That's one. Two, it's a much more powerful and fulfilling relationship when you connect with someone early in their career as they're growing and then you build together than it is to potentially do a clout deal. Because a clout deal, like, would that person be there for you if your mom was sick? If you couldn't make rent one month? If you were really sad one day? No, those people don't care about who you are. It's like clout exchange. And it really lacks living a purposeful life. And I think the beauty behind being a creator in any sense, whether it's a podcast or a YouTuber, a business person, is finding a sense of purpose. I think that's the hardest thing, because you could have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a sense of purpose, you feel like, I don't know, just like in a daze, lost. Like, what's the point of my life? It's like, why do people who make it really rich and have a ton of cash still seem unhappy? Because the thing that actually leads to happiness is purpose. There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and it's about how he survived the Holocaust. And he talks about he survived the Holocaust because he served a purpose larger than himself. It was for, I believe it was for his wife, his children, or he just had a purpose larger than his own individual existence. And that's how he survived something so atrocious. And so I think about that day to day in my life. Like, what is the purpose beyond my ego, beyond my own gain? What is the purpose that I'm serving that will truly leave an impact? And the last little note I'll say on all of this is I'm actually not a person who cares about legacy. I don't need people to remember me when I'm not here. So when I talk about purpose, I'm not also talking about legacy. I think that's something separate. I'm just talking about having a sense of my why on my day-to-day living existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great way to start this conversation, because I could not be more aligned with that. And we could take it to like your own personal life and like how you live a meaningful life, but also in the space of business. I think when we talked about purpose and meaning, I think we're talking about brand. Like, you can have a company and have a lot of very good or even lucrative transactional relationships with other companies or brands or people. But that doesn't mean that you're building a brand. And if you're watching this, you probably know something about brand. You know, we talk here about a lot about creators and brands. So I think this is a great way to start, because to build meaningful relationships in business means to build a brand.
Yeah. And I think building a brand, like, what is a brand? I think a brand is a culture. And I think as we create our content, as we create our businesses, we want to think about what kind of culture are we cultivating? What are the core values of our audience? What are the core values of our teammates that work with us? What are our own core values? It's something Tony Hsieh taught me, who ran Zappos. He's no longer with us, and he was an amazing human and leader. And he talks about how important core values are into the fabric of your company and your creations. And without core values, no one understands why they're showing up for your content or the jobs that they work for. So I think that's really, really important.
For brands who are maybe watching this, or entrepreneurs who are running brands, or even like brand managers in these brands who are watching this, what can they do? How can they build meaningful relationships through their content or with creators to build our brands?
I mean, first of all, I think it's about caring about who you're talking to. Like, instead of just being like, I'm just going to use the class example. Oh, I want Gary Vee to be in my video or something. You know, it's just like, okay, with the Gary Vee brand name, you know, I think it's about really caring about who you're talking to and what's important to them, and not just wanting to talk to them because of their status, but genuinely liking them as a person. Like, if they had no status, would you still want to talk to them? And I think that will really transform the way you communicate with others.
And so with no status sometimes comes lack of, awareness, right? So I think what I understand from what you're saying is try to find creators before they blow up.
Yeah, I think it's more fun to find creators before they blow up, and it's specifically to look for, because look, today everybody seems to want to be a creator. So you don't want to just try to talk to everybody because they may not share your core values or your commitment to, you know, building up a fruitful business. So you want to look for someone who is really committed, someone whose content you respect. And as you study people, like a perfect example, when Eric Decker, who goes by Eric, started his YouTube channel, I started following him when he had close to no subscribers or followers or anything like that, because I saw that he shared a commitment that other creators that I respected had for their craft. And I was like, I think this guy is going to really blow up, because I could tell how dedicated he is. I could tell how creative he's trying to be. And indeed, he became one of the bigger YouTubers. And so as you study different creators, you could see some of their commonalities, especially in the category you want to focus on. So if you're looking to focus on financial content, if you're looking to focus on adventure content, if you're looking to focus on artistic, like art, if you're looking, depending on what you want to, sports content, depending on what you want to focus on, you want to find characteristics, like success characteristics that are similar amongst those different people. So whether they're at stage 1 or stage 10, they still share the same characteristics, and you can kind of predict that they're going to become the next big thing.
That's really interesting. And I think we can talk about more the Eric example, because he's like a very popular creator, and I like his evolution is very interesting to observe, and it's also easy to observe because like he grew so much in like 1 year. I think he went from nothing to like 1 million subscribers, and then year 2 million to 10 million, right? So with like the span of 2 years, we have the entire career of this creator that like it's been like insane, right? So I like Eric as a great case study to understand what are these commonalities or like these like traces of success that he's been leaving behind, right? So maybe we can build a bit more into like Eric, and maybe you can tell me what are the things that you found interesting in him before he blew up. For all the brands hearing this, maybe they can look that like into those things for the creators in their niche.
Well, one simple one, he was recommended by a YouTube creator that I just loved at the time. He stopped making YouTube videos since, but Eric Tabak. So funny, such an amazing creator. So he was friends with Eric Tabak, and so he was in one of Eric's videos, and then that's how I discovered him. And they're both named Eric, so Eric Decker was in Eric Tabak's video, and that's how I discovered him. And then I just saw that his consistency and his passion, the things I was talking about before, but really it's this studying of people. You could almost call it trend spotting, right? Because people just share this same care. It's how I know, not to sound pompous, how I know that I have something special, because whenever I've been to business conferences for, you know, since I was a teenager, and they all say, oh, you have to be like this, and you have to be like that, and you have to be like this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all those things. That's crazy. I'm also someone, as Alex knows very well, with self-limiting beliefs and a whole slew of other not so great things that counteract the great things that I have. But the point is that you pick up little clues of what success characteristics are the more you study your industry and your craft. And so I study in business seminars and with business leaders, and I take note, like if Simon Sinek is talking about the why of a brand, or if Tim Ferriss is talking about delegating, you know, or if Sophia Amoroso is talking about risk taking and having your own identity and saying F everybody else, like I pay attention. You know, Alexandra Cooper with Call Her Daddy and how she's built her podcast. I pay attention to all these. I study them. Like I am a forever student. I study everybody's habits. I listen to what they say. I listen to a lot of interviews, and I decipher what are the repeating principles of all these people. And then what do I see in myself, and what do I spot in others? And it just becomes just this kind of like formula of success.
I love this because this is something I relate to a lot, because I also
that's why I like your Instagram like channel.
What do you mean?
Well, on your Instagram reels, you usually go to these business conferences and you pull out the highlights, and essentially you're cliff noting success characteristics. You're like, let me just spoon feed it to you.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Thanks. I didn't have to go to the conference. You told me all the highlights.
That's great. Yeah, this is something that I do as a student myself, right? Because like these are like when I go to a conference, like I sit down, listen to whatever the person has to say, and then I'll make my notes. And then it's like literally copy paste, put my notes on Instagram for those friends who weren't able to attend this time. And I think this idea of like being the student as a brand, you can do that as well. So maybe you cannot afford or you don't want to work with the top influencer on your or creator on your niche, but then you can try to find other creators that are starting up, but like you need to understand what's working on your niche. So this idea of studying is super interesting. I super recommend that you really understand like all the creators, even like for your ads. Like if you understand what they're doing successfully, you can apply those same techniques through your ads, but you'll have to try it and experiment with that first, because it's not like on off. You like, it's a whole process of understanding how it works. And the other thing you mentioned that I really liked was connections and like collaborating with people. I feel it's like for brands, because they're so transactional a lot of the times, or at least that's what I've seen. It's like, oh, we need to like improve our numbers this quarter. Oh, let's work with creators. How much money do we have? 10 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand. Okay, let's allocate that into like working with a creator. And like, you know, they do one transaction, one contract, and move on to the next thing. They're not embedding themselves in the network. And being one more, which I think plays big part in the success of all of these creators, the Mr. Beast, Erics of the world. They all know each other and they all collaborate with each other as one more. And as brands just sitting on a corner, just like fishing for those creators, I don't know if that's the best way to, you know, build a brand through content.
As creators, the main skill set that we should all have is to be remarkable storytellers. And so the question is, what story do we want to tell, and which brands are a part of that story, and which brands want us to be a part of their story? And I think it's such a missed opportunity if we're not creating a longevity storyline.
Why do you think so?
Because I mean, look at what's it, SeatGeek with David Dobrik, and like how SeatGeek was now interwoven. It's like it kind of gives you like this having a SeatGeek ad is almost like a status indicator that you've made it as a creator, because you have the ad from SeatGeek, and then SeatGeek is validated that they have the creator. Whereas like say Duracell, the battery company, wanted to place an ad, you don't have an emotional connection with Duracell. Duracell isn't part of the storyline, but SeatGeek is, and you feel warm and cozy in that they're part of the community, right? And so what brands do you want to interweave into your community? So again, it's a longevity story, and they come up over and over, and it's a long-term relationship. It's not a singular Duracell transaction. I have nothing against Duracell. Duracell, if you want to sponsor my podcast, I'm super down. But yeah.
And since you mentioned podcast, I think that is like actually a really good way to do that. Because when you're making a podcast like we're doing here, now you're not just like fishing for creator or something. You're just like becoming one. And I feel like you know a lot about this. You've been doing this successfully for a minute now. And so tell us about your experience on how you build your podcast. Is that a good networking tool? How is that different than going to a conference and just talking to someone? Like, take me through this a little bit.
There's so many things. One of the things is, I think creators feel a lot of pressure that they have to create in a certain way. Perfect example, video versus audio only. I have to have video. But do you? Like, I have an audio podcast because that's what I feel most comfortable with. I think there's a lot of pressure or perceived pressure to create in a way that's not authentic to you. And Colin and Samir talk about you really want to enjoy your production process or you're going to quit. And I highly agree with that. So first of all, think about what kind of creator you want to be, and not for you, not because there's a right or wrong, but genuinely what you enjoy. And then when it comes to podcasting, Andrew Warner, who created Mixergy, who's one of the OG podcasters or YouTube podcasts before, or or I should say video podcast, before it was a thing. So that's why I'm kind of stuttering on the word podcast, because it wasn't a thing at the time that Andrew Warner was creating Mixergy. But he would talk about how he has access to the most high level conversations with the most inaccessible people, all because he had a video show. And so that is a really big benefit of being a podcaster. You could have conversations with people who otherwise would never have a coffee with you, who would never let you pick their brain for 15 minutes. And now you can have an hour-long conversation and form a relationship with that person. So many podcasters have these extraordinary guests, and they end up forming real relationships with their guests. And it's very exciting. So that's one thing. My podcast has led to speaking engagements. I'm keynoting with Richard Branson at a big business conference, all because of my podcast. The Swiss government contracted me to meet with different entrepreneur organizations around the world, all because of my podcast. There's so many cool opportunities from podcasting. So when you think about podcasting, I think most people think, what mic should I get? Or they think, how do I get ad money? First of all, that thing about ad money, most of the ad money that you're thinking about comes from ad networks. And most of those ad networks pay you pennies. I've never worked with an ad network. I always sell my deals like flat rates, and I understand what my sponsors need and the pain point they're trying to solve. And I understand how my podcast can solve that for them. It's very much like a business. And so then they pay the flat rate, because the flat rate is actually a more economical solution to the problem they're trying to solve. Whereas if you, like, I'll give you an example, Women in Tech podcast, tons of female engineers listen to the show. A brand wants to hire a female engineer. They pay who knows how much, $50,000, $100,000 to a recruiting agency just to get leads for the engineers. I say, okay, sponsor my podcast for $10,000 and I'll send you the female engineers. They just saved thousands of dollars just because they chose a different vehicle to solve this pain point that they had. So what are the different, like, do you know your market well? And who your audience is, what kind of brands would be interested in that audience, what kind of brands your audience would be interested in, and then choose your packages accordingly. So yeah, the most popular thing is the whole per listeners or it doesn't have to be that way. That's the beauty of being a creator. There literally is no right and wrong. It's just this continuous innovative invention of creating your own path. And yeah, it's super scary. It's not easy. There's so many ups and downs. Creator burnout is a real thing. I think it was Mr. Beast or someone, I can't remember. Someone recently had this triangle where like a normal business has like a CEO at the top and then this whole hierarchy. And if you take out the CEO, you still have the longest side of the foundation in place. But a creator, it is like it's like a reverse triangle, and the creator's holding up the triangle. So if the creator gets taken out, the whole thing falls over. And it's tough. It's tough being a creator, but it's really exciting at the same time. And something that Alex does extremely well is understand value, like the value that you bring to sponsors, to clients, to customers. And I think that's incredibly important to understand when you're creating. What is the value that you're building into your content business? Is it merchandise? Is it sponsorship? Is it patronage? What is the value that you're building in so that this can be both an energetically and financially sustainable business? Because if it is not, you'll be forced to quit or you'll burn out beyond return. So it's really important you think about being a creator as you think about being a founder and being a business. It's all one and the same.
Yes. And I think also as a brand, like imagine all these things that we're talking about and that Espree is mentioning here as for creators, and like the way the creators approach things, and like burnout and like sponsorships and all of those things. applied to brands as well. And the way I always try to translate, okay, how would a brand react if they were to do this? And for me, sometimes like as a brand, you can also think about sponsorships. I think it's very funny that a lot of brands don't even think about monetizing their YouTube channel just because they're thinking of YouTube as their marketing channel. I'm like, maybe you can actually monetize and it can become one of your products. And I honestly would argue you should. Because then your product, like your media, your videos will get better, right? And for sponsorships and podcasts, you can have other brands join your podcast as a brand and magical things happen. I actually, when I was running the Video Ask brand, we did this. Like we had like an informal partnership with Bit where their head of content was on the podcast with a couple of collaborations. And then who knows what, if we would have extended that more, we could have maybe created like an integration and like stuff like that. So the benefit and the value that this brings is huge. And for brands, you can also think like a creator. You can also think, okay, are we gonna burn out? Like if we keep like making content at this pace, do we have a system in place with the teams in the members in our team that is able to support this? Just want to pause right here real quick because I've just noticed something. You've watched more than half of the episode so far, which tells me you're getting some value out of it. If that's the case, I would deeply appreciate that you like the video so the algorithm serves it to more people. Now, if you like this type of topics, the creator economy, branding, stuff like that, I make videos like this every week. So by subscribing, you'll get videos served to your homepage every week. It's literally how YouTube works. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's go back to the video.
My favorite blog post, I bet you love it too, is 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly.
Yeah.
And I think that we forget, especially in the Mr. Beast era of like 75 million views within 24 hours, we forget that you could build a highly financially stable business, whether it be a content business or anything else, with 1,000 true fans, even 100, true fans. And that's why you just have to really think about what is your business that's integrated into what you're creating. Your business could be Google AdSense from your YouTube channel. Could be, there's a ton of things, but then you want to be tracking that. Like if it's Google AdSense, you want to be tracking, okay, am I doing all the things? Am I creating my content in a way to have the right Google AdSense integration? Am I using profanity? Am I making content that can't be viewable by kids or something, so important to think about the full spectrum of being a creator. Even like Eric has a Pizzafy that, he created a product. That's another monetization. Yeah.
A lot of creators are creating products, and I think if they keep doing it at like the level of execution that some of they are, they'll just pass traditional brands because it's so I think I've heard someone said it's so much easier to build a product or like start a new service than it is to build an audience, and I could not agree more. So if you actually have the skills of building that community, there's plenty of ways you can serve and help that community and get a return by doing so. One of the things that you mentioned is the true friend. And I know you're really good at building these meaningful relationships. That's your art. That's what you do with We Are Tech LA community. Just give us like step one or step two, or like, the little tips for brands that never knew how to like really engage with their people. And I've been there. Sometimes I struggle with that too. Step one, step two, how can you actually connect with someone? How you can have a true friend or fan?
Yeah. So I consider myself an artist of human connection, which is really funny because I'm very introverted and quiet when I'm not working. I'm like in the corner just with my close friends. What I mean by being an artist of human connection is I love facilitating connections for others. And what I look for is, what do two people need? Who are they? I take time to speak to them on the phone, like short little calls, to truly understand the core basis of my audience. If you talk to 100 people on the phone, you'll pretty much have a good demo to understand, 10,000, 20,000 people, because they share so many commonalities. So then if you find out a classic one, a founder looking to raise money from a VC, okay, but why would the VC want to talk to the founder? Okay, we like talking to founders who have failed before, so they show they have grit. Or the VC is like, we're really into SaaS companies, software as a service. We're really into SaaS companies that are in the healthcare space, and then you have the healthcare founder who's a female who has failed before and has all this criteria. And you have the VC that, is looking to, empower more women, who's looking for entrepreneurs who have failed in the past, and healthcare. And then you just match them together. So the more you treat people like puzzle pieces, and it's not from a self-gain, it's truly to do good in the world, it's pretty magical. Like, I feel electric when I see a bunch of people come together. Through my events, people have met their co-founders, they've met their future spouses, they've had babies, they've raised money, they've met their roommates. Like, it's just really beautiful to, create mutually beneficial relationships for other people. So truly looking at the experience you're creating for others and letting go of being self-serving. So take yourself out of it completely and ask yourself, how can I best serve the community? And then really looking at, if you're putting together an in-person experience, look at the venue space. Think about the sound of the space, the smell of the space, who you're inviting. Will the people you're inviting truly complement one another? What is the point of them being there? And again, forget clout. I could care less about status and clout. I'm talking about truly who the person is. What value do they bring in being there? And then as at the food, what will they taste, when they're there? If someone feels awkward and uncomfortable and introverted, as I do when I'm out alone and like not working, I go into a place and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, there's 20 people. I don't know. I'm like, I'm just like, I don't have my Sasha Fierce Beyonce personality on. So I'm just like the awkward, sixth grader that got picked on. And so really being a host, that's what you are. You're being a host of people, being a host that is noticing how people are feeling in the room, and you're being attentive to that in a very comfortable, accessible, safe way so that people feel comfortable being vulnerable. You don't just have someone enter a room and be like, good luck with that. Like, that doesn't curate culture. And so you really want to create an environment where people feel seen. I think that's the magic sauce to everything, to personal relationships, to professional relationships. We all just want to feel seen and feel safe. Even the assholes of the world just want to feel seen. We have that in common,
This is so interesting. Because there's ways to do that through your content. You can feature your audience in your content. You can talk to them in the comments and feature comments. And 100%. This type of content actually tends to do really well.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want to mention on this, though, is, I don't know if you've probably seen like this. I think it was also Colin and Samir were talking about this idea of like, creators giving oversized objects to like top creators.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, I have seen that.
Right. So for those of you watching who don't know what we're talking about, so there's this trend on YouTube that's been going on for like 1 or 2 years where like smaller creators will give away oversized crazy stuff to the Mr. Beast of the world in the hopes that they will be able to get a reaction video or a video and use their clout, like you're saying, Espree, to raise themselves up, right? So it's a strategy. I'm not here to judge any strategy, but what I think is interesting is like, I've been at VidCon, going to Vid Summit this year, and I've been a lot of like conferences and like a lot of creator talk. And a lot of it is about like, how can we keep engagement high? How can we increase our CTR and like make the videos better? Yeah. But the more time I spend in this space, the more I realize that the videos are important, but they go nowhere without like the connection.
The community.
And I think that's the reason why I don't.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's me coming from like traditional advertisement and traditional creative, teams and stuff like that. We all focused in like as brands in the output.
Yeah.
And we don't really cultivate those relationships, those like, make people feel seen, make people connect with each other. And at the end of the day, when I look back at my 2 years as a creator, like my last year as a creator, every time that I actually got a boost in terms of engagement was because I collaborated with someone, with like a genuine person that I cared about. We did something together, or someone did a shout out because I did something that I cared about, or I helped them. And it's actually really the thing that like actually got me more followers or like more views. And the more time I spend in the content, more I nerd out about it, and more I forget about relationships, and it tanks, right? Yeah. So I don't know, this is just my personal experience, but I do feel like you have a really, really, like your point of view is really interesting on this.
Yeah, there was this comedian a long time ago who created a lot of video content, and I remember he shared when he mentioned at the end of every episode that he did, or comedy sketch or something, the name of all his patrons, more people contributed just because they wanted to hear their own name. And so he just made it, he would just 100 names, he would just read them off at the end of every single one. But more people contributed because of that. So it's really interesting. Another thing, I'm wearing this jacket right now, and it's my favorite musician, Ren. He goes by Ren Makes Music online. And the reason why I want to bring him up is I'm sure there's tons of creators that do just as good a job at community. But for me personally, being so attentive to the community that Ren has built. Ren is an extraordinarily talented musician. But watching his community and the personality type of his community is fascinating. I'll give you an example. Right now, there's beef online. There's this guy, an unknown artist named Dada. Ren just hit 1 million subscribers. So like his community really just grew. The way he hit 1 million subscribers, and sorry if this is a little bit messy the way I'm telling the story, the way he hit 1 million subscribers is reactor channels started reacting to his music, and then he in turn gave love to the reactors, and then like music reactors, like they would react to his music, and then they all created this community together of reactors reacting to his music, him creating new music, and then acknowledging the reactors, and then they'd acknowledge one another on Twitch, this whole thing. Also, his audience, they're all really kind, loving people who are empathetic and care about one another. It's fascinating. So Ren has now utilized his popularity by helping musicians who don't have a following gain exposure. And then so all of Ren's following will go to these musicians that Ren recommends, and we'll all like just follow around like a school of fish or something. It's wild. And I see them.
That's crazy.
Like me talking to one another, being so nice to one another in the comments on YouTube, on Facebook, it's like Ren is very clear that his culture of his music is to unify humanity. And so I'm going to bring it back to this beef online that I segued away from for a second. So this guy made a diss track on him, and Ren is really passionate about music. So because he's really passionate about hip hop and music overall and the culture, it's called battle rap. He responded to the diss track. And then at the end of this diss, Ren said, "No, really, I played your game now. So we're going to play my game. My game is I want all of my audience to go give him love. He's a new artist. He's a great rapper, and let's go give him love." And that's how he ended his diss, right? And it just is so in alignment with the culture he wants to create and the purpose he stands for with music, which is unifying community, unifying humanity, loving people unconditionally, not judging people on what they look like or their ailments and things like that. It's just really empowering. Anyway, all this to say, there's just so much fabric woven into, you know, me wearing this merchandise and what it stands for, and him as a creator, you know, what it stands for. You could say the same thing about Yes Theory. If you see Yes Theory hoodie or merchandise, you know what that person stands for. You know, they stand for adventure, curiosity, being kind. So what is it that your brand and your creator business stand for? And then how are you going to leverage that message?
So Espree has given us some clues on how to leverage creators and relationships to build our brand. But how do you actually establish a partnership between a brand and a creator? What are the initial steps if you're just starting out? Well, watch this conversation right here with Dot Lang, where she told me step by step how to do it.